Hi, I'm John Davidson, lead pastor at Evangel Temple. Thank you so much for tuning into the message today. I hope it's a blessing and an encouragement to you. If it is, leave us a note in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed this message from God's Word today.
We're going to hop into Matthew, our Here Comes the Kingdom series this morning. I am not Pastor John. I'm Pastor Eric, and I'm our kids and families pastor here, and I'm excited to be able to share the Word with you this morning. If you were really looking forward to listening to Pastor John preach this passage, you're not alone. In fact, this week, my youngest son, Wesley, Melissa's laying him down for a nap. And Wesley's getting ready to go down, and she's talking all sweet to him and, trying to just make it like a really sweet environment before he goes to sleep. And she goes, I'm your best friend. Are you my best you're my best friend. Excuse me. I'll get it right. You're my best friend. And then she goes, am I your best friend? And he goes, no. Pastor John, my best friend. And then she goes, okay, why is Pastor John your best friend? He made me take naps. So try to lay him down after that. And then, so you're not alone. If you were listening, wanting to listen to Pastor John, so was Wesley this morning. But the Lord's going to help us. He's going to go before us. God's word's going to come alive because that's what God wants it to do. So we're going to go to Matthew chapter 25. We're going to start in verse 14, somewhat of a familiar parable. If you've been around church for a little while, you've probably heard this parable taught in a lot of different ways. But what I'd like to encourage us to do this morning is to, even if you already are starting to go where you know this parable is, and you are thinking of all the different things as it relates to the parable of the talents, I want to encourage you to sort of just release your preconceived ideas for just a moment to try to see if the Lord wants to show you something new and fresh and different this morning, because I believe that He does. And we have a tendency to do that, right? When we come to passages that are somewhat familiar, we seem to just kind of go right there, like, oh yeah, I get this. I know what this means. And what I'd like us to do is try to see something new and something different. And this parable is going to continue in the context of what Jesus has been doing over the last several weeks about talking about His second coming. And so He's going to continue that theme this morning, and this matters because eternity, what you think about eternity affects what you do now. It affects the way you live now. Whether you have a Christian framework or worldview or not, what you think about eternity, what you think about what happens either when Jesus comes and wraps this whole thing up, or when this life on earth ends, what you think happens next affects the way you live right now. And so let's hop into our parable this morning, starting in verse 14. You'll see it on the screen. Again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. Then he left on his trip. The servant who received 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more. The master was full of praise. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more. The master said, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back. But the master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant, if you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it." Then he ordered, "Take the money from the servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now, throw this useless servant into outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." All right, so a couple of quick notes here about this parable before we break it into a few different sections. I think that this parable is best understood within the framework that Jesus is talking about what his kingdom people will do, not how you get into the kingdom. It's not how you get into the kingdom. This is not a picture of that. He's saying once you are in the kingdom, if you are one of my kingdom people, Jesus is saying, this is what will happen. This is a picture of what should take place in your life. So this is a great opportunity for those who follow Jesus this morning to really have a heart check and go, am I in fact following faithfully? Because this is what this story is really all about. So let's break it up into 3 different parts this morning. The first part is going to be the investment of the master. The second part will be the first and second servants. And then the third part will be the third servant. And so let's jump into part 1, the investment of the master. The point is this: Jesus has made an investment in his people. So Jesus is the master who, represents Jesus in this story. He entrusts a certain sum of money to each of these servants, right? He entrusts it. It was his, and he gave it away, and he told them, here's now your responsibility. You're entrusted with this. So he allocates this sum. He gave 5 talents to one, 2 talents to another, and 1 talent to the third. Now, don't feel bad for the third servant. You're already kind of like going, well, why in the world did one get more and this one got more and he got less? 1 talent is roughly equivalent to somewhere in the neighborhood of like $745,000 by today's standards. So, we're talking about a really generous entrusting that even the one who got the 1, this master has already been crazy generous. And think about what the responsibility is that he's entrusted to the ones he gave even more to. And so he's given them a responsibility. And already, we're with our overinflated sense of fairness in America, we're well, why did he get more? And well, I should have more. I think that's where it comes from. Is we go, well, why do some people have more than me? And I think we're asking the wrong question. It's not about that. It's more about are we being faithful with what we've been given? And we're going to miss out on what we could do as long as we're looking to the left or the right and we're comparing what we have or don't have to others. We're going to miss out on the responsibility that we have right in front of us, the thing that we've been given to be faithful with. And so this master gives this sum of money, and he does it by sheer grace. Sheer grace, he gives it to them. And that's important, I think, for us to recognize and to grapple with. Because, again, in our framework here, in our culture, we tend to think that we've gotten where we've gotten by just being really hard workers, and that we were really disciplined, and that I earned my way, so I deserve to be able to have the things that I have, and I got here because of me. But I guess I would want to challenge that a little bit. Really? You controlled the education that you received as a child? You controlled the family that you were born into and the parents that you had, the place and time that you grew up in. You controlled the connections that you have that afforded you certain opportunities that weren't afforded to others. No, we've been by sheer grace given a certain realm, a certain scope of responsibilities, of gifts, of opportunities, of all of these different things that are in your life. And now the question is, what will you do with it? And so that's our That's our first part here. Part one, we've been given an entrustment from the master. He's given us, he's made an investment. He's made an investment in us. But then we come to part two, and it's the first and the second servant. Now, the theme that's reiterated with these two servants is that their faithfulness produced fruitfulness. They were faithful, and that produced the fruitfulness. So you have these first two. One's given 5 talents, one's given 2 talents. And the story then just kind of goes on repeat for a second. So they each respond to the master the exact same way. The master responds to them in the same way. They're each just given the same response from the master. Come, let's celebrate, good and faithful servant. Why does he then include both? Why does Jesus feel the need to include both of them if the response is the exact same to both of them? Like, why just do the repeat thing? It's because it's not about the money that they were given. It was about the faithfulness that they had the opportunity to steward. See, we get hung up on the amount of money, like, oh, one got 5, one got 2. Wonder what's going on there. How much did, and we try to place ourselves in the story. That's actually not the important part. The important part is, what did they do with it? They were faithful. This story is actually all about faithfulness. That's an important question. What is faithfulness? Because it's actually quite possible through a religious, works-oriented approach to God that says, I'm going to earn my keep, I'm going to earn my way with God. It's possible through a religious, works-oriented approach to God to actually produce a lot of things apart from faithfulness. You can produce things, but it's apart from faithfulness. But it's impossible to not produce fruitfulness when you're truly faithful. If you are really faithful, it will necessitate, you will produce fruit. And so the question for us is, am I doing it am I producing things as a result of my faithfulness, or am I doing something different? So what is faithfulness? Now for that, we're going to be able to go to another passage. I'm going to go to the Sermon on the Mount, and we're not going to read through the whole Sermon on the Mount from Matthew chapter 5 through chapter 7. I'm going to try to just do this. I'm going to try to pull on a thread that runs through the Sermon on the Mount just to try to draw out like what's happening here from like a really high level to make a point here. Because remember what I said about this parable, it's not pointing to how you get into the kingdom, it's what his kingdom people will do. That's what's going to happen on the Sermon on the Mount in more specific ways. He's going to say, if you are one of my kingdom people, this is what should happen in your life. You should be doing all these sorts of things. And so he actually gets quite specific. So let's look at some of those things. If you want to, again, go look at like the specifics of the Sermon on the Mount, go a couple years back, YouTube, on our YouTube channel, watch Pastor John preach it. But look at the beginning here. In chapter 5 of Matthew, Jesus starts to make these funky little connections between blessedness, which is like deeply satisfied. So when he's saying blessedness, he's saying deeply satisfied. And he says, so you can be deeply satisfied alongside being poor in spirit. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are meek. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are those who are persecuted. Now, this should kind of blow our minds a little bit, because how in the world can you be deeply satisfied but also have all of this turmoil in your life? Christianity is like one of the only ways that actually reconciles those things and says that, yeah, you can be deeply satisfied in your mourning. You can be deeply satisfied in persecution, in being merciful. But he doesn't stop there. He keeps going. And so if you keep reading through chapter 5, 6, and 7, what about where Jesus raises the stakes and he says, no, it's not just about adultery. You've heard that was the thing. I'm looking at your heart. I'm looking at your heart going, yeah, if you lusted, now you've already gone there. Or what about how he raises the stakes with anger and he goes, yeah, it's not just about murder. Sorry, it's about the anger that you're harboring in your heart. Or what about where he says, love your enemies? Who in the world could do that? Actually, from a secular point of view, I've heard a lot of secular thinkers who look at that and they go, that's masochism. Nobody, that's terrible. How could you tell people to actually love their enemies? But Jesus does. Or the command not to worry about your life. Or if you're insulted by somebody slapping you on one cheek, turn the other cheek to them to slap also. Or he says, don't worry about storing up earthly treasures. It's not about all that stuff. Okay, what is Jesus getting at? Why does he say all these things? What is he getting at as it relates to what his kingdom is about? He's saying that my kingdom is a reversal of values. Complete reversal of the world's values. All the things that the world prizes will despise. All of the things that they despise will prize. He goes, it's completely upside down kingdom. And this is not because you try really, really hard. None of it could happen without a changed heart. This is what happens from the inside out when you're a part of his kingdom. Another way that we could summarize, let me try to summarize the Sermon on the Mount this way. And you'll see it on the screen because it's a little wordy, sorry. We don't prize what the world prizes, while we also aren't afraid of what the world prizes. But we do prize what the world despises. We don't prize what the world prizes, while we also aren't afraid of what the world prizes. But we do prize what the world despises. So let me give you some examples. What might that actually look like in real life? How about with your money, with our money? It means that we'll be different with our money. We won't hoard it, but we also won't blow it. But we will live somewhat recklessly as it relates to the way the world looks at the way we spend our money, because we're so generous with it, because we're helping people with it. From a worldly point of view, they might be thinking, you're going to get taken advantage of by spending your money that way. And we go, yeah, but it's actually a reversal of values. It's because I value things differently than the way you're going to value things. So we have different definitions for what actually is financially risky. It might mean that you drive a car that's somewhat more modest than everybody else. Why? So that you can actually be generous with the margin. You're not trying to all right, so like some people, like the cars they drive, it's because it's about them. All right, they wanted to appear a certain way to other people, and so that's why they got the car that they have. But a Christian's going to go, no, I don't value things like that. I'm going to drive something more modest, not just because, not saying I need to drive a clunker, but it's because I want to be more generous, and I want to care for people. I want to do something different with the way I spend my money. Same thing with your house. Does it mean you have to live in a junk house? No, but it might mean if I can afford here, I'm going to buy here so that I can be generous with the margin. And you know what the world will do? They will stand in awe and go, why in the world would you do that? And you'll be able to go, yeah, it's because I have a different value system than you. I look at things different than you do. It might mean that you take less financial profit for your business so that you can be more financially generous to your employees, or so that you can have a more reasonably priced product to sell. What about with hang on. Let me say this as well as it relates to money. Not only will you do that, but you won't be afraid of money either. If you're afraid of money, that might show also that you're still being controlled by it. See, I'm not going to be afraid of it. I don't have to have it, but we also aren't chasing it. I don't have to have it. I'm not chasing it, but I'm also not afraid of it. It's just one more opportunity for me to be able to give God glory with it. It's just one more thing for me to steward. It doesn't capture or control my heart so that I can actually be able to do with it what God would want me to do with it. How about with your work? What might it look like with your work? Maybe like you're a doctor, lawyer, or think of some other vocation or skill that people would ordinarily pay a large dollar amount to be able to have you perform. Maybe you have a skill like that. But because you have a different sense of what's valuable, your value system has been reversed, you will use that skill and that expertise to be able to bless people who could never, ever repay you. Remember, there's another spot where Jesus says, don't just invite people into your home who could do the same thing for you, but he said, invite all the people into your house who could actually never throw you a party. I mean, this is what he's saying. This is what it looks like for us. I'm going to take my skill and I'm going to go, yeah, who can I bless with it who could actually never have afforded or done anything in return for me? Maybe it's like pro bono work that everybody in your circles is going to look at and go, why do you do that? It's because I have a different value system than you do. How about with sex? That means that you're not going to give yourself to physical nakedness without also committing in marriage to be emotionally and spiritually and financially naked with them too. You're going, I don't just want to be one with you in body. No, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it the other way, where we're one in wholeness in every part of our life. How about with parenting? You'll parent your kids different. When the world around us is putting so much pressure on kids and teens to perform academically or athletically, and they overcommit their kids to all sorts of different things, you won't, because you have a different value system. While at the same time, it doesn't mean that you won't teach your kids how to do hard things and have a good work ethic and develop discipline either. Look, if nobody thinks you're a little bit crazy for doing the things that you do or living the life that you live, like if nobody's looking at any of those things in our life and going, why? Then maybe we are prizing the things that the world prizes a little bit too much. Maybe we're not prizing the things of the kingdom enough, because there should be a distinction. Now, it's one thing for me to give you like a bunch of examples. Like, oh, great, Eric, none of those apply to me. Well, let me try to help you out with this, because it's far better if we can try to figure out how to find our own example. Find our own example. How do we do that? How do I identify what it is that I need to do to demonstrate kingdom faithfulness in the world right now? What do I need to do? You have to learn to identify your own idols. What's an idol? An idol is just all of these spaces where you're tempted to put something out of order. You're tempted to put God down here and this thing up here. So what are those things? Let me give you some questions to help try to figure out what that might be. What are the things that you can't live without? What are the things that you're like, I gotta have this. And if I don't have it, I'm actually gonna feel crushed in life. Where do your values look a little bit too much like that of the world's? Or what are the things that you're intimidated by? What are the things that you're actually kind of scared of or fearful of in some way? See, do you see how the kingdom way of Jesus is actually completely different? It's motivated from a completely different space. It's not even on the same map as the way that the world operates. And do you see how living faithfully isn't just about just doing more things? Sometimes we read this parable and we just think, oh, I got to do more stuff. It's not just about doing the more stuff. It's about really being faithful with the thing that you've been given. It's about this. Instead, faithfulness is appropriating what Jesus has done for you by responding in like kind to everyone around you. It's saying this: Jesus has done this for me, so now I can do that for everybody else around me. Jesus has done it for me, so I can do it for others. I mean, that's what the Sermon on the Mount is really all about. So what are those areas for you and for me? The master's response. How does the master respond to these first two servants? One commentator put it like this: the reward of faithful discharge of this responsibility wasn't a well-endowed pension, it was even greater responsibility. He didn't just go, oh yeah, here's your profit. No, he goes, here's even greater responsibility. Let's put it like this: you were faithful with a little, so now you'll be faithful with much. If we can be faithful with a little, we'll be faithful with much. This is like one of the prayers I pray over my boys all the time. Lord, help them right now while they're small. Help them learn how to be faithful with these small little things so that when they're young men and older, they can go out and actually change the world, and they'll be able to bear up under the weight that you give them of the responsibility, and they'll be able to be faithful with it. But it starts right now with learning how to do dishes and take the trash out and help me work on the car and pick up sticks out of the yard. Like all of those little things, like that's teaching people to be faithful. And so don't despise those little things. Or if you're a younger person in here and you're like chomping at the bit for greater responsibility, don't despise the fact that you have to have small ways now. God's preparing you. God's setting you up to be able to bear more responsibility. So just be faithful with the little things. If it's stacking chairs, if it's showing up on time, if it's showing intentionality in some way with whatever it is that you're doing, then do that. Okay, so that's the master's response. Part 3, though. What happened next? Part 3. We have the third servant. So this one was given 1 talent, and he was meant to sort of stand out as a contrast to the others, not because he was given the 1 talent, but because of how he responds to the master and what he does. That's what makes him stand out. When he comes before the master, he says, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back." What's going on with this third servant? His view of the master is distorted. And so what he does next is distorted. His view of the master is distorted, so that means all of his actions then in relationship to the master are also distorted. And if that's true, well, what is the view of this? What is his view of the master? How is it that he's relating to the master then? The third guy says almost exactly what Adam said to God in the garden. I was afraid, so I hid. And so this guy's saying, I'm afraid, so I hid your money. What are they doing? They're operating out of fear. They're operating in their relationship to God. They're operating out of fear. Elizabeth Elliot put it like this: fear arises when we imagine that everything depends on us. Everything depends on us. So really, fear, anxiety, worry, all these things that kind of crop up, not that they always are, but they are in large part can very much be a symptom of pride. It's a symptom of pride. You think you're ultimately in control of your life, and you think that you're the one who's going to put it like in its certain spot and where it's going, and so therefore you're going to feel all the pressure when something's poking at it. And so that's why you worry, and that's why we feel fearful, because we think that it all depends on us. The commentator I was reading out for this passage, he puts it like this as it relates to the third servant. You'll see it on the screen. The third servant failed to recognize his master's intention and substituted security for service. He represents a discipleship which consists of playing it safe and so achieving nothing. A religion concerned only with not doing anything wrong. Really like the way he closed that, because it hits home. That's how we view our walk a lot of times. I didn't do anything wrong, as if that's the definition of faithfulness. This is exactly what a works, religious-oriented approach to God will do to you. It not only will you be constantly wondering whether or not you're measuring up enough for God to let you in, or measuring up enough for God to be pleased with you, or measuring up enough for Him to bless you in some way, but it'll paralyze you from actually being able to trust God. It'll paralyze you. And it requires risk. Like the commentator said that he was risk averse. He played it safe. It takes faith to be able to be faithful and just to live out the Beatitudes. You're going to look different than everybody else around you. And people are going to think you're crazy, and you might even be wondering yourself, man, if I'm this generous, or if I'm this relationally generous, or if I use my time in this way, am I crazy? You might be wondering that. It's going to require risk. There's no way around it. But look at how the first two, the master responded to the first two. Call them faithful. I'm going to give you more responsibility. So this guy operated out of fear and security. He missed out on the reward. So how is it that we do the same? I've said it before, and I think but it bears worth repeating. Christianity is the only faith system that not only critiques what you do, but it critiques the why you do what you do. It's not just about, oh, I did this. No, it's what's underneath the thing that you did. And so whenever we're serving in some way, or whether it's here or whether it's out in the workplace, or whether it's with your family. I mean, every single moment, right, is an opportunity to be faithful. Jesus is all of life for all of life. He's everything. And so that means every moment is an opportunity to be faithful, not just like whether you're serving here on a Sunday or with your group or whatever. No, it's like all encompassing, everything that you do. And so how do you know how you're operating in relationship to God? How do I know if I'm doing it as a means of out of just a sheer overflow to do it in response to all that He's done for me? How do I know if I'm doing it that way, or if I'm trying to earn favor with God, like the third servant, or if I'm operating out of fear with God? How do you know? Well, do you operate out of some sort of inadequacy before God? Do you serve and do what you do to try to put God in your debt? Going, okay, if I do this, God will do this. Well, you're operating on a religious framework then. You're operating in a way that's actually not in the way that He intended. Do we try to manipulate God, do we bargain with Him and going, oh, if I do this, you'll do this? That's actually a religious approach to God. See, this parable should give us a heart check if we're following Jesus. If we're saying that we're followers of Jesus, it should really give us a heart check, but not so much because of how much we're doing. But it should give us a heart check and cause us to ask questions about why we're doing what we're doing. Why do you do what you do? We get hung up on this parable on all the numbers, like, oh, that means I got to do more, I got to be more. It's actually more about why are you being faithful? That's a question of what's underneath why you do what you do. So what's the master's response? What's the master's response to this third servant? Well, it stands in stark contrast to how he responds to the others. He takes what the third servant has and he gives it to the first. He takes it away because it's valuable. If you're going to squander something that's value, my kingdom purposes, my kingdom opportunities, if you're going to squander those opportunities, He's going, all right, well, I'm going to take it from you and I'm going to give it to the person who's actually demonstrating that they will be faithful. They're being faithful. So, yeah, is God a God of grace? Yes. But He's also rational, going, no, you're squandering something of such great value, so I'm going to take it and give it to the one who will be faithful. And then the third servant is thrown into outer darkness. You're like, Eric, what does that mean? Well, Jesus has no fear talking about hell. He talks about it a lot. And this is one of the many metaphoric images that Jesus gives to describe eternal separation from God that some will experience. And is he trying to give us a literal picture of what it looks like? I don't think that He's trying to give us a literal picture. I think He's trying to point to something that's very real that people will experience, and that is awful. And He's saying, I don't want you to find yourself there. And I think that there's a lot of, not here in this room, but just here in this passage, I think that we can look out at the world and we know that there's lots of people who say, yeah, I don't follow Jesus, and they know it. They know that they're not following Jesus. I think that this passage is more of a stark warning to those who think that they are servants of Jesus, but they're not, and they weren't. They were shown unfaithful. So what are we to do with all this? I'm going to have the worship team come back up here and help us for these last several minutes, and we're going to just allow for a little bit of a moment for us to respond to God's word this morning. And so, as we do that, let me say this. Are we saved by grace through faith alone? Yes, absolutely. We cannot contribute to our salvation lest we end up like the third servant. But this parable is a picture of how we're not saved by faith, which remains alone. True, real, authentic faith will produce fruitfulness that represents that changed heart. It'll produce in you a different desire that will overwhelm all of the other desires. Is there still a brokenness in our lives that we will have to bear with and wrestle with? Yes, of course. But there's a deeper desire when you meet Jesus and the gospel comes alive in you. There's a deeper desire to please the one who gave himself utterly away to an infinite degree to close the gap between you and God. So we shouldn't assume that, oh yes, I believe in Jesus. I'm good. Check. Move on. Give me something else, Eric. No, if year after year there's not a change and a growth and a development from the inside out, then maybe our belief is more like the third servants. So I don't want that for any of us. I think that we need to have genuine, real belief. And I think that this is an opportunity this morning for us to wrestle with it and to kind of do what Paul did. Paul encouraged the Corinthians. He said, examine yourselves and see if you're in the faith. Check your heart. See if your faith is genuine. He's telling them to examine their motives. Check your heart. And so I think all of us, we need to do that. I mean, especially even for if you've been around the church for a long time, if you serve in a lot of ways, or if you're a pastor, this is even more applicable, because when you're around it a lot, you can start to just kind of look like you play the part. It's like, oh, I did that thing. I'm a pastor. I do this for my vocation. I do a lot of religious things, and so therefore it looks like I'm being faithful. If it just looks like you're being faithful, but it's not coming from a place of genuine awe of who Jesus is and what he's done for you, then a change needs to take place.
Thanks again for watching the service today. I hope it was an encouragement to you. We'd love to hear from you, so if you'd like to leave a note in the comments and let us know what you thought about the message, we'd love that. And if you're ever in the Springfield, Missouri area on a Sunday morning, we'd love to have you join us for church. You can attend our 8 a.m. classic service, or you can join us for church at 9:30 or 11.